What's up, everyone? This is Missionary Ramos,
There we
uh,
go.
member of the Church of God World Mission Society, uh, Sunland branch, one of the OG branches, probably one of the oldest branches, I think. There might have been a little something in LA, but Sunland was the first branch to come out of the South Korea um, cult wave, and it struck the LA area, and that's where I was recruited.
Okay.
Nice to be here, Edgar.
Before we even get into the interview, man, I just kind of want to give you your flowers. I wish that I could give you like a Shannon Sharp type introduction. I don't know if you watched his podcast, but
I do. Yeah, I do.
I mean, obviously, man, you deserve it, bro. And I just want to say that, you're one of the inspirations of why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because, even at the time when I saw your interview, man, like, I did not like anything you said because I was so lost in the sauce, man, thinking that, they were right. And, getting to know you, man, I realized, man, you're just a cool guy, man. And so I just want to thank you for doing what you're doing, man, and for speaking
Well,
out and being the pioneer of this.
thanks, man. I wouldn't mind saying something real quick on that note, Edgar. Um, and I never really mentioned this, but over the years I've thought about it. And sometimes you bury stuff. You kind of bury things that you don't want to deal with. But I can tell you, it was probably mentally one of the hardest times in my life. Mentally, because you got to understand when you're fully indoctrinated and you're going against God Almighty. I don't know if people understand what that means, especially. I'm not trying to praise myself. I don't even know why I did it. It was just the movement took place at that time, and I was just moving accordingly to what I was finding out and just moving along. I don't think I really thought about it much of what I was doing and the what what I did and what it sparked. You know what I mean? The kind of
Yeah.
spark that, not to say it might have not sparked eventually anyway. It probably would have, like all cults do. But um, I'm just reflecting back. I reflect back a lot now as years went by. I reflect back a lot of how difficult that time was having mother call and that whole, my God, I'm going against God. This is insane. What am I doing? What am I thinking? Am I reading stuff that's Satan driven, or is Satan polluting my mind? And so I really I wanted to point that out, that it was a really, really, really tough time. And the reason why I wanted to point that out is um, in case anyone's watching your videos that might be feeling that same way, man, they need to understand that that's a normal way to feel, but it's okay if you're questioning with a pure heart, a good mind, a good heart. I didn't have any, to be honest, I didn't have any bad things that happened. There was a set of bad things. I was mad at somebody or I was in conflict. No, it was just it was that time. It was the time. And there was some stuff going on at the church. There was some stuff that was making me think, but nothing with me in particular, nothing that was affecting me, but there was some stuff going on that I was reflecting on when I was there. But yeah, I want to let anyone who's might be watching this, might be thinking about coming out, might be questioning things. Mentally, it's going to be difficult because if you believe like I believe, like Mother was God, and Sang Hong was the second coming of Christ. That is not an easy task to come out, but it's possible. It's possible.
Man,
Evidence is evidence. Proof is proof.
it's definitely not impossible, man, and you're a testimony to that because it's been so many years since that first episode, where we everyone saw you in the World Mission Society world, in that interview with Steve Hassan. And
Yeah,
and look at you, man. You're doing just fine, man. And
yeah,
you're good, man, and your family's good. And
yeah.
so I think that advice is going to go a long way for the people that could be watching this because you're right. I felt that a lot of members felt that they feel that uneasy. They feel, man, am I betraying God? Am I being Judas Iscariot? Right?
Yeah,
But again, the truth is not harmed by investigation. And so if what we're saying are lies, then they would find out already, right? That they should be able to show the evidence. And what I mean by evidence is not rumors. It's not talking about this person is like this person is like that, but actually, where is the evidence? And if there's no evidence, then they really have nothing to say, because we're just speaking our experience, right?
Right.
We're speaking what we went through while we were part of this organization. So no, Ron, I really appreciate you saying that, man. And let's just get started from the beginning. How did you get recruited into this crazy cult, man?
2000. Tatiana was born in 97. 2000. Yeah, 2000. I left in 2011, end of 2011. So yeah, it was about 12 years, a little over 12 years. In 2000, my sister Tammy, a lot of people might know her. She kind of dropped. She left when I left. Um, but my sister Tammy met somebody named Will. He might be a deacon or a missionary now. I think he's still at the church. Last time I checked, but she met him down at Santa Monica Beach, the pier, and she ended up studying with him for a bit. Went to the church, and then she was living with me when she first moved to California. She moved from Rhode Island to California. She was living with me, but then she moved down on her own. And she started calling me and telling me about this church she found. And I actually called her church lady. I was like, hey, what's up, church lady? Because she didn't stop talking about this truth she found. And I need to come, and you need to come. I'm telling you, there's something to this. And so, of course, I was curious like anyone else. And, I went. And I sat down at the church. That was the one in Sunland. Um, Ended up studying with John Lee, who is probably Pastor John. I think he's Pastor John Lee now. He was deacon at the time. We had a pastor, Joseph Kong, who was he only spoke Korean. He spoke a little bit of English, but not enough to communicate. Sermons were actually in Korean with Judy, John's wife, would interpret. So we had the headsets, and Joseph Kong would be preaching in Korean, and Judy would be like interpreting, but it was the worst. Just as a side note, Ed, it was the worst interpretation ever, which we were just like, huh? And we'd look over each other and be like, did you hear that? So it was tough in the beginning, but there was a lot of friendly camaraderie, and that's
Yeah.
kind of what did it in the beginning. And then John would study, and John spoke perfect English. So I went and studied with John. Not perfect English, but good English. He preached in English. He was there for a reason, preaching in English. So I studied with John, and within the first night, to be honest, I think we studied for about 4 hours. That's that deal well.
Yeah.
You get someone there, you study, you keep studying until they say yes.
Yeah.
Um, or you can, they can say, okay, let's do it again tomorrow. But there's no shortage of studies. They'll keep you there for 3-4 hours. They don't care. They'll go over study after study.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you get
but yeah, then
baptized that first night?
I got baptized. I got baptized that night.
Yeah.
Yeah, one and done.
Yeah, man, that's pretty much how it went for me. And like you said, that's the perfect way to describe it. They'll keep you there until you tap out and give in. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
if you say no, I mean, yes, you can come back for another study, but they're gonna try to pressure you. They might hit you with the study. Do not boast about tomorrow.
yeah.
And they'll be baptized immediately, and they'll try to get you baptized right
Be
away.
baptized immediately.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but so how was it like, man? And even before we get into that subject, since you were kind of like, one of the original members here in the United States, I kind of interested to know who are the ones who originally came over from Korea to the United States to establish the church. Do you know?
So I know when I got there, and I know that he was there from the beginning too. John Lee, of course, he came right over. He was one of the first ones to come over. His wife Judy, um, Joseph Kong, and his wife Deaconess Ceci. Um, God, Peter. I don't know where Peter is now. I know that he was in Colorado. He jumped around a bit, and nice guy. I like Peter a lot. He was a Korean guy. And he ended up going out because whoever was there that was Korean, the goal was to spread out. And there was a few others. I can't even remember their name. There was probably a total of, when I joined, there was probably a total of 15 Korean people. Um, Korean members, and they were there from the beginning. That was the original crew. Trying to think who else was there that was Korean. Well, Joe, yeah, but Daniel Park came later, but yeah, it was pretty much them, and it was probably like maybe 15, 15 to 20. There was probably more baptized members, but actively coming on Sabbath and not staying all day. I'm talking about maybe coming for a service, leaving, and then maybe coming back for night service or something. They wouldn't stay all day, but there was probably about 30, maybe 30 total that stayed all day on Sabbath at that time.
Yeah.
And that's and I'm being generous with that. And that's Americans and Koreans.
Right.
Yeah, so that yeah, we used to have the service there and it was interpreted. That's funny.
It's funny when you bring up the interpretation, man, because there was a point when I was interpreting for the church, and man, I felt like I couldn't get anything right, and
Wait, you would from English to Korean or
no,
no?
no, no, for Spanish,
Spanish.
Spanish,
Oh,
yeah.
Spanish. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
but
Yeah.
there's definitely a lot of interpreters. I really don't think not to knock them because, like I said, I was one of them. But it's
Yeah,
funny because sometimes they don't. There's not like a screening process, or I mean, they just throw anyone up there. They don't even
exactly.
know if the people are catching the message or not, man. And
Right,
some of the people
exactly.
would look at me in the audio room looking lost. Like what are you talking about right now?
You were probably a lot better, Edgar, because that Korean English was so broken. It was like, but you made enough of a connection. We'd go, and then you'd study with John later. John would
Yeah.
explain it later about the sermon. He'd take us all aside and say, "Here was a sermon."
For sure. And one thing that sticks out to me is you mentioned like the camaraderie, right, in the beginning. And
Oh yeah,
so would you
big.
say that the love bombing was still there even from the very beginning?
Oh, that's pretty much all they could do at that time. They didn't speak English.
Yeah.
You got to figure, you come here from South Korea, you speak no English, and you're told go preach to the gospel to Americans.
Yeah.
The first thing you have to do is you got to recruit some Americans,
Yeah.
and you got to communicate enough with them. So the first members were like Tim McCarthy, Will, Cecil, Roxanne and her family, and Milton. All those the old school cats. They were like rough characters,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't mind me saying it. Tim McCarthy wouldn't mind me saying it. Tim's been on the internet, but and Will wouldn't mind me saying it, but he's still in the church. But they were kind of rough characters, but it didn't matter at that time because the goal was bring Americans into the church. Later on, um, the goal was to get, you know, working better Americans, people more educated, things like that. But yeah, in the beginning, there was probably like 7 or 8 that began to learn how to teach the Bible, like, but not appointed yet. Everything's appointed, so you can teach the Bible under supervision, but when you're appointed to do it solo, it's a little bit different. That means
Yeah.
you've been signed off on or whatever.
For sure, man. And so obviously things have changed, from when you were in the cult and now, right? But like
Yeah,
how would you describe in the beginning as far as like was there dress codes? Because you said something earlier where you said
yeah,
members would go home in between services. And like
yeah,
nowadays, that's unheard of. You can't even get up to go to the bathroom during service.
yeah.
So
No, it was so different, Edgar. It was so different, and to be honest, that's what attracted me to the church. That there was a lot of camaraderie. I mean, the Bible studies were good. I'm not gonna lie. The Bible studies were good. They were convincing. Um, if you don't know all the facts, or if you don't have any contradicting evidence, they look really, really fantastic. But the condition back then, just to give you an idea, so when after I left and I started hearing all this controversy about birthdays, they don't celebrate birthdays and things like that. I was thinking to myself, yeah, we did in the early days. They just stopped doing it because my understanding now, as I understand about cults and things like the love bombing, everything is accepted in the beginning. So when you're trying to build you think about that. If they came and said, you can't do this, can't do that, can't do that, and they spoke Korean, broken accents, hardly understanding, who are they going to gain? Nobody. So it was a matter of let everything go. And I think even in Korea, we were kind of taught in the beginning, like, hey, don't say anything to anybody. The goal was don't say anything. Don't address anything, don't point out anything about somebody, just preach the gospel. That was the goal in the beginning, and that's what I loved about it. We had anyone come into the church, we preach to them and try to grow our numbers. But I mean, on Saturday we had full on basketball. I told you, I think we talked a little, and I was telling you, man, we played hardcore basketball. So service would end, and then because Joseph Kong loved basketball and his son was good, and Joseph Kong was good too. He's probably like 35, 40 maybe. But we would change because there was one little bathroom and it had a shower in it, and we would all change and we'd play basketball, and sometimes like the females would come, the deaconesses, whatever, and they would say something in Korean, and Joseph Kong would be like, "Oh, okay, okay, okay," and then we continue playing, and we'd hurry up and shower and change, and like get into service, and we're dripping with sweat, and we're like, and we were dripping with sweat because it was so fun. We had birthday parties there. My nephew Andrew had a birthday party there. So to me, I mean, I don't know. How do you interpret that? Do you was that the way it was done 2,000 years ago too? Do you go somewhere and you don't make big rules or anything, and then later on you say what the rules are? I don't know. But to me, it just seemed like there was a lot of love then. There was a lot of camaraderie then. And then I watched it slowly disintegrate into, strict. This is what you do. That's it. Don't allow it. Tell that person, hey, missionary, did you see what so and so is doing? You need to go talk to him. He's talking to a female right now, a sister. And it's like, okay, well, maybe they're talking about the Bible. Yeah, but you're not supposed to talk to sisters. Okay, let me go and address it. If it was John or something telling me that, but it's it got real weird near the end, put it that way. And that's what made me start looking.
And I feel like I could say that two things could be true in that situation. Like, you know, it could have started that way because it makes a lot of sense how you said they first come here, right? They have to bring people in.
Yep.
And if they start acting like, boot camp or military type stuff,
Correct.
it's going to be very difficult to bring members into the congregation. So you got to let things, just pass.
Yep.
But I also believe that, as time goes on and they start getting more members, right? Then they can start, applying some of these tactics that they have because they already have enough members to where, you know what I mean?
You
They're
can
able, yeah,
you can shed some, no problem at all.
right,
You can
exactly.
shed some that are not fitting in, not following the rules, and not following the structure, and you can shed them without even feeling it later on.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And then also the other part of it is I think that it also comes down to individually, right? Because I would say that even in my experience when I first came into the church, they were very laxed, right? And I thought that was just for everybody. But what I've come to realize over
That's correct.
time is that when you first come in,
That's
they're
right.
very laxed with you because they're
That's right.
trying to win you over. They're trying to love bomb you. They're trying to make you feel like your family. But as time goes on and the indoctrination process begins, that's when they start changing on you, right? That's
That's
when they
that
start getting more strict.
that's absolutely correct. Because later on, as we grew in numbers, obviously we grew. We went to Reseda and built the church there and added on to that church and opened up churches in our county. As we grew, that's when the changes took place, and the gradual change was fine because it was like, yeah, don't get on new members, just like you're saying, don't get on new members. They just coming into this truth, and let them feel comfortable at first and preach to them, and then let God change their mind.
Yeah.
That's how it was. That's still good, Edgar. That's still kind of a good system.
Yeah.
The problem was, to me, the biggest problem is they weren't telling the truth. That's where the problem comes in. The structure of how they did it. Okay, they don't speak English. They're looking to spread the truth that they believe is the truth. They want to make it easy at first. None of that stuff I really had a problem with. I understand the love bombing with cults, and they all probably use that system. I get it. But where the question comes in is, you weren't telling us everything. So when you hold back stuff and you don't say everything, even when things were questioned, even when there was some whispers of things and we would ask, it was like, no, 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 no. Who said that? Who said that? Tell me who said that. That's wrong. They should never say that. So it was the lying and withholding things. That's the thing that I have the biggest problem with. Tell the truth. If somebody wants to join a cult, let them join a cult. Maybe they have camaraderie. Maybe they like hanging out with the same people. No problem. Their life, if that's what they want to do with their life. But if you're going to take someone's life and occupy all of their time, make sure you tell them everything about it.
Yeah.
You tell them about this is how our church was established. There was some controversy in the church. Make sure you explain all of those details.
Yeah.
Um, and I just don't think that was being done properly
And even to this day, they still operate the same way. And
because there's a problem with what they're saying. That's the
yeah,
point.
because
There's a problem.
if you tell somebody straight up all the beliefs of this place, they'll run away.
They'll run away.
They'll slam the door right in your face. So
They'll run away. Could you
it,
imagine, Edgar, if you heard, okay, so Christ Unsung is Second Coming Christ. He had An Sung Hong is the mother, but there was another mother before her, and she said she was God. But then An Sung Hong was arguing with her, and they got into a big fight. And come on, who's going to believe that that's Second Coming Christ and mother? It's like that sounds like something you hear in your own family.
yeah.
That's not like a God way of spreading something. That's not. So I don't know. To me, it was once I found out those things and started looking, it was like it didn't matter how much love bombing they did
Yeah.
because you're not telling the truth.
Yeah. And by definition, withholding the truth, I mean, that's considered lying because you're not
That's considered
presenting
lying.
all the facts, you know? And so, yeah, I
That's
agree with
correct.
you, man. And that's one thing that always bothered me. And another thing that bothered me is even their doctrine, because like you said, some of their doctrine, when you don't know any better, it sounds amazing. But one thing that really made me upset when I look back at my time there is when I joined, they told me, what you need is Passover. You're a sinner who was kicked out of heaven. And the only way to get back is by keeping this Passover. Once you keep this Passover, you're good. You receive the seal of God, you have the forgiveness of your sins, you're great. But the problem is, once you do that, then they tell you, well, actually, you also need to keep the Sabbath day. And then, oh, you kept the Sabbath. Well, that's good. But you need to also understand that you need to keep all three services on the Sabbath because God asked for the Sabbath day, not the Sabbath hour. And then
Mhm.
Sabbath day turns into third day worship. And then third day worship turns into the seven feasts. Seven
Yep.
feasts turn into, construction and being a gospel worker and taking care of kids and, being just their full-time dedication, right? And they don't tell you these things up front, right? And it's like a
Yep.
hamster on a wheel. You're
Yep.
continuously chasing something that you're not designed to obtain in their structure.
Correct. And you brought up something that I do want to share with you real quick. I don't know if I think I might have shared it in personal discussions, but I'm not sure if I ever shared it on a tape. Um, you brought up about the Passover and keep the Passover, and it reminded me of some of the things that made me start questioning. So towards the end of my time uh, at the World Mission Society Church of God, I had one of my fruit. It was my wife's fruit. Shannon. Shannon was her name. She was Vietnamese. She was from LA. She had two kids. She had a husband, but he didn't come. And she worked with my wife at the time. Um, my wife was a property manager and she was a leasing agent. So my wife was talking to her. I'd go and study with her. She eventually came to church with her two kids, not her husband. I think her husband came once or twice, listened to her service, but didn't come. Um, it was on the Ascension Day feast where you wanted to be outside because if it happens, you don't want a roof over you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah,
That's why
exactly.
it was. That's how it was explained. It's outside because we could go right now. We got to be ready. You can't have
Yeah.
that roof hitting your head. Um, but it was Ascension Day, and she had been baptized for a couple of years. She had been coming. She wasn't, she had two kids and a husband that didn't believe, so she would stay half a Sabbath, and then go home. She'd come on Tuesday here and there, but she kept the feast. My sister Tammy, who was butted up with her as her partner, to look out for her. Um, she would come to all the feasts though, and this was she had kept the Passover once already, and now this was a second time Passover had come. She kept the Passover. We got to Ascension Day feast. and we were all outside at a park. And my sister Tammy got a phone call from her husband that she had died, a bus accident. She was trying to cross the street in LA, and a bus was taking a corner and ran her over, and she died. I'll never forget. We got the news at Ascension Day. Tammy came and saw me. She's like, Shannon's dead. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she said, she's dead. And I was like, that can't be. And I went and talked to Pastor Joe. Well, it was Missionary John at the time. And I said, Missionary, I said, Shannon's dead. And he was like, what do you mean? I said, she got ran over by a bus today. And I remember nobody knew what was going on. It was just me, Tammy, Pastor, and we're just finding this out. And we're at Ascension Day, and it's like insane. And within about 5, 10 minutes, past Missionary John was going, he came over to me. He said, how is she dead, Ron? And I said, I don't, she got run over by a bus, Missionary. I said, I don't know. It's unbelievable. She goes, she didn't keep the Passover, did she? And I said, yeah, she did, Pastor. She was at the Passover. So he goes, I don't think she ate the wine. Her faith was weak. Do you think she didn't eat the wine and she didn't drink the wine and eat the bread, right? And I said, Pastor, Missionary, I said, I think she did. We went and got my sister Tammy, and I'll be honest with you. I was like, I don't know, Pastor, maybe not. I was kind of, because I was so locked into being that you
Yeah.
want to you want to be part of doing the right thing with the group,
I call it
and
being lost in the sauce.
being lost in the sauce. I'll call it that too, Edgar. That makes sense, actually. That makes the most sense. Uh, but my sister Tammy was not. She was a little defiant. She was a spitfire. And I remember Pastor Missionary John had told her, oh, she didn't take Passover, right? And Tammy was like, no. She said, Missionary, I was right on the side of her because she was her helper. She said, I saw her drink the wine and take and do the bread. And he was trying to convince us, I don't think so. No, no, you can't be right. Are you sure? Trying to make us change our mind and then begin to spread that message. Because at this time, I think it had gotten out to a few deacons, maybe Deacon Chris, Deacon Will. It had gotten out. So I think Pastor Missionary John was trying to like figure out how he was going to resolve this. And the reason why I bring this up is because at that time, we didn't think we could physically die, bro.
Yeah.
We were told that we couldn't physically die if we had the Passover. That's not something I'm making up. We asked. I preached it. I told people, if you take this, you won't die. Physically? No. I did it in front of John. I preached it in front of John. I wasn't a renegade preaching something else. When John was my mentor and he would sit in on my studies and sit there quietly and look down when he would teach me how to preach and I was preaching, I would say, you can't die. And they would say physically, I'd say, no, Passover is what? God's protection. The plagues in the Old Testament passed over, physical death. So when we got that, that was unbelievable. That was one. About 4 months later, Deaconess Turk, a deaconess, she died
Oh wow.
strangely. Yeah, very mysterious. It was like a mystery because she was like good friends with my sister Tammy. And we got the news from her husband. Her and her husband both would come to church, but Stanley, he did dip and he was kind of like he was an ex-cop and he was kind of a big guy, bald head and white guy. And Turk was from Indonesia or something. And he was never really into it. He would go because Turk would go. But yeah, Turk died mysteriously, and her son Surakan, Stanley Turk and Surakan, yeah. And that was another one. I did her funeral. I was a procession of her funeral, and I remember John telling me just short because Stanley wanted it. He wasn't a real believer, but we wanted to make it like she was a church member and we're supportive of this. And so Missionary John told me, go ahead and do it, but really, really short run, not a big deal. Don't make a big deal over it because they didn't want to make a big deal because a deaconess had died. When I think about it now, they didn't want to make a big deal because we weren't supposed to physically die. So keep things
Hush,
on the
hush.
quiet. That can't be the truth of God. If you have to keep things on the quiet and you have to squash things and you have to direct this way and that way to avoid certain things, that can't be the way of God. So that was probably 2008, 9. It wasn't I didn't leave right after that. Those were some of the red flags. And of course you keep going. You keep going and you think this is some testing of yours, don't question.
Man, that speaks a lot to their character as well. I mean,
Yeah.
somebody passes away, regardless of what you think or this teaching or whatever, the humanity should take over, right? And
They don't
and,
care,
and
Edgar.
they don't care. And
They don't
that
care about that part. That part they don't care about. It's numbers.
I can't
It's
imagine.
numbers.
I can't imagine someone saying to me like, Edgar, preside over this funeral. You know, this person might have family or loved ones, people they know, and it's like just keep it short. You know, just keep
Yeah.
all because they don't, like you said, they don't want the bad press. You
Yeah.
know, and it just shows their true intentions. And I can definitely 100% vouch for what you're saying about the Passover. Them telling us that it would physically protect you, and it's actually in the books written by General Pastor
It's a
himself.
fact.
So
It's a fact.
they can never deny this fact. Whatever they want to say now that it's spiritual or whatever, it doesn't matter. We know what we heard. We have our notes. We have the books. I have a
And
whole
I'm
bookshelf of literature behind me stating that.
and I'm gonna give you something right here. I'm gonna give you some ammunition that's gonna be powerful, brother, because they knew that before they came to the States. Because people in South Korea, since the beginning of this church, had died.
Oh wow.
So it was a blatant lie, bro. A blatant lie. It wasn't oh my gosh, someone can die. It was a blatant lie. That's the part that should make you upset. That's the
Yeah.
part that should make you say, you shouldn't do that. That's not right. You
And
shouldn't do that to people.
and it goes back to what we're saying is this organization from the beginning, it's the foundation is built on lies. How can
Lies.
you build anything on top of that if it's already started on a lie? It's not going to end
Yep,
well. And
that's
these
right.
people just continue to build on lies on top of lies on top of lies, and it's crazy to me. But Ron, I want you to kind of take me back and to the beginning again, as far as when you went to Korea, because I have questions about like how it was when you went to Korea. How was that experience like, and how did they even approach you? How long, from you being baptized until you got to go to Korea?
Short period of time. Within months, probably within 5 to 6.
That's crazy.
Um, so there had been some group they had been at that time. Um, the only ones that went, I believe, there was Deacon Will, Tim, Cecil, because I saw pictures. They went to see Mother. Um, and after that, no one had gone for a while. There was one group very early on when the church was first established here. They took a group to Korea to go meet Mother. They footed the whole bill. Nobody had any money at that time that was in the church, at least. And they took them to Korea. I saw the pictures. After that, I was in the church for probably about 4 months, and there was talk about me going to Korea. And I ended up going at that time. It was me and my sister Tammy. We both went because we were both pretty ambitious in the church. And like I think I told you, I said we were I had started learning how to teach the Bible from John a bit, so I could do some selected Bible studies, and I was pretty good at it. I was pretty good at doing the Bible study, and it was in English for the first time. And a lot of times, I'll be honest with you, Tim, I love Tim, and Will, I love those guys. I think they're completely misled, and if it works for them and they're happy with their situation, that's fine. But they didn't really have a good skill. They were a little bit all over the place with stuff, and you had to kind of be, in order to preach, you had to stick to the rules. And Tim and Will, and they were kind of like, they loved the mystical stuff of it, so they would go off on tangents a little bit, and they were really looking for someone just to do the Bible study strictly. So I was pretty good at that. They wanted me to go to Korea. Me and Tammy went. We went for about a week. Yeah, about a week, maybe 5 days, 6 days. I came back, I studied a little bit more, and then the decision was made that I was going to go. And they had asked me, would you consider going to Elohim Academy? I don't even know if there was an Elohim Academy. I know the buildings where that houses the people that come in, they weren't built yet. I didn't stay there. I stayed with Pastor Park and like two other family members. We stayed in an apartment in Seoul. So during Elohim Academy didn't have any rooming, but we saw the buildings. I saw the buildings were up, but they weren't finished being constructed yet. Um, but they had took me a tour around there. But I was there at that time. I went for about I think a little under a month, almost a month. I went, and that's when I was in what what they now know as Elohim Academy. I was the first one to be the test subject of how it's going to work and how they're going to teach Americans and the structure. So at that time, I would meet with Pastor Park every day. We'd have breakfast down in the cafeteria. Then we'd go up and we'd sit in the Bible study room. We'd go around a little bit. I'd meet some brothers and sisters, and then I'd sit in the Bible study room and just learn how to preach the Bible every study.
And this Pastor Park that you're mentioning, is it Pastor Daniel Park by any chance?
No, this is Jonah Park.
Jonah Park. Okay.
Yeah, Jonah Park. That's the one I think I told you when we had that conversation for a few minutes the other day. Jonah Park was John Lee's father-in-law. So that
Okay.
was Judy Park's father.
Okay.
Um, and he was one of the main teachers. He had a fantastic style of teaching. I will give it to that. And I think that his ex profession was a teacher. So he came into the church as a teacher, and then they utilize his talent for teaching the Bible.
So
He was a good teacher.
so you learned from one of the best teachers they had in Korea. So
Oh yeah.
you learned all the how many did they have the sermon books at that time?
Oh yeah.
So did they
Oh
take
yeah.
you through the crash
The,
course of the sermon
No, no,
books?
not the brown one. Not the brown that little thin brown one
Yeah,
with all
yeah.
the organized. No, they didn't have that.
Okay, so they were just
Yeah.
teaching you whatever structure they had at that time. They the fundamentals. You're like the guinea pig of
The it
what it's
was
going to
the
turn
it
out
was
to
the
be.
it was the brown book and the green book, honestly, Edgar.
Wow.
It was
So
getting deep into the brown book, learning those deep studies of the brown book and the green book,
yeah.
and a lot of deep depth to them. And I'll be honest, it was interesting when I was there. It was pretty interesting because it was all day. We'd have breakfast, we'd study, we'd have lunch, we'd study, we'd have dinner and study, and then we'd go back to the apartment and have some fun time or whatever, just laughing or talking with each other.
That's pretty interesting that you say that because the Green Book that's written by An San Hong, but the Brown Book, as we know it, that's written by
Past
General
general past,
Pastor. So the
yeah,
fact that they're teaching you from the beginning, the two books they're using to teach you, the majority of their doctrine, half of it is coming from General Pastor, which we would
yep.
later find out that him and An San Hong's teachings are totally different. They
He broke
contradict each
away.
other. Yeah. So
He broke away. Yeah,
that's actually a pretty good point to bring up from the very beginning. They're already teaching you, most of General Pastor's doctrine.
yep,
So obviously during this time you have to meet Heavenly Mother, right? So
yep.
what was that experience like? And like when you met her, did you really believe like she was God?
Well, is this honesty time?
It's honesty time. Let's keep it 100.
I didn't have that feeling.
Yeah.
And I acknowledged that I didn't have that feeling to myself, not to many others. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
You got to come back and go, oh my goodness, she's God.
Yeah.
Oh boy, she's God. But no, things were. So here's the biggest takeaways that I took that made me believe, like, okay, she could be. So we all went for dinner one night. Mother was taking us to dinner, and we went to a steakhouse in Seoul. We just went to a steakhouse and got one of the private, one of the rooms, and it was all the senior pastors. It was me and Mother, and of course Jonah Park, who wasn't a senior pastor, but he was my teacher, so he went, and some of the females. But it's funny because one of the um, head what do you call it, right hand women to Mother. I don't know if you've ever seen her there, but she's always on the side of Mother. She's always like running off and doing something. I can't remember her name, but she was doing all the ordering for the table. So at the time, and I was in my mind, I was thinking, um, I would like they had spaghetti and meatballs, and then they had steaks and stuff. So at the time, maybe I was thinking it, I don't know, maybe I wasn't, but I related it to this. because I'm thinking I wanted spaghetti and meatballs. But as the head person came and she was helping the waitress order her food, um, she said, "Oh, uh, I think I was deacon at the time. I want to say I was deacon before I went to study. So it was probably about maybe 8 months later. I was made deacon." And she said, "Deacon, oh, do you want steak?" And I said, "Oh, okay, I'll take a steak." I didn't want to be controversial, like whatever she offered.
Yeah.
And when I got the steak, some pasta came with the with meatballs, and then she said, "Oh, mother thought you might want spaghetti and meatballs." So to me, that was like, oh, she read my mind, not thinking, "Hey, I'm from the States, I'm Italian, maybe spaghetti and meatballs." I don't know. It could have been
Yeah.
something that simple. But I didn't see. I heard brothers and sisters come back and said that mother went like this and cleared the clouds and the rain went away. No, no, nothing
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Nothing like that. I didn't have a feeling. There wasn't a move, and I don't know if there's supposed to be. So I'm not saying this in a bad way.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like, oh, there should have been, because I don't know. Until you meet God, you don't know what it feels like. But there was nothing. That's all I know, is that I didn't feel like, oh my God, I'm in the presence of God. And I didn't get a vibe like that.
Yeah.
Um, I got what I got was a lot of movement and a lot of structural things going on around me that seemed to be very organized and very organized, I'll say.
Yeah.
One person would say that, the other one would move, that would move. It just seemed very, very organized. Like they
Yeah.
were ready for my coming
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
Korea, and how the structure was.
Yeah, like it's very coordinated, not organic,
No, it's
and
not organic at all.
it's almost like I never got to meet her. Honestly, it might have been better that I didn't, because I mean I did believe that she was God, but I
Yeah.
mean if I would have went and saw her, I'm sure I would have got the same feeling that you got, because she's not God.
Yeah.
And I mean, just imagine I walk up to her and I say, "Hey, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 100." I mean, she wouldn't be able to
Right.
guess it, and
Right.
so it's just
But they
one.
would tell you, Edgar, they would tell you, if she guessed it, then your faith isn't good because you're questioning God.
Exactly.
There's
You
that
can't
dynamic.
win. You can't win. But
You
see,
can't win. You
here's the
can't
thing.
win.
The thing is, again, they take advantage of people who don't know the scriptures. So if,
That
for
is
instance,
correct.
when doubting Thomas tells Jesus that he's doubting, Jesus says, "Put your finger through my hand," right? So he doesn't say, "Oh, you of little faith," like he's like, "Test it," right? And
Right.
so, but with her, it's impossible, right? Because
That's right.
again, you'll get rebuked, and she
That's
can't
right.
she can't show her power, she can't do this, she can't do that. Well, which one is it? Because I heard the same story that you just mentioned about her clearing the skies. Isn't that showing her power? And so they
Right.
pick and choose when she shows her power, to selective individuals, probably the individuals that are in on it. I would say, but again,
I'm a pretty good read of character, and I can tell you that 99.9 of the people that came back, because I saw a lot of groups go and a lot of groups come back, and I've had conversations with all of them, and there wasn't any spiritual change where they were like enlightened and all of a sudden they began to live a godly life.
exactly.
Wasn't like that. And I'm just being honest, Edgar. And I'm not
Yeah,
blaming anybody. I'm not faulting anyone. I'm just saying that's the reality of it. It didn't hit like that. Whether it's supposed to or not, I'm not an authority of that, but I just know it didn't. I'm just
yeah,
answering that question, that it did not hit like that at all. She seemed very common to me. She seemed like, like someone who might be ahead of a company or something.
yeah.
She exerted power because everyone moved around her, and you could tell she was something or somebody, but nothing where you thought, this is the creator of heaven and earth.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's a great point that you bring up, because again, if I'm living in the time of, if I see Jesus come back, right, I wouldn't expect Jesus to concern himself with taking me to a steakhouse to get personal with me. You know what I
No,
mean? To
no.
like, I think that he would have bigger fish to fry. You know what I mean?
Right,
And it's
right,
just like you said,
right.
even the way that she moved, it was so coordinated, and it's how a CEO would act. Where it's not, you're not saying anything bad. You're not saying she was moving as a bad person, but as far as comparing her to the God of the Bible, the creator of the heavens and the earth, she did not act like that, right? And
Yeah.
so, I even interviewed I don't think the interview's out yet, but I interviewed a sister who went to Korea, and mother gave her ice cream, and it turned out that the ice cream that mother gave her, she was allergic to. She had an allergic reaction, had to go to the hospital.
Are you
How
kidding me?
I mean, just imagine if this is God. I mean, is God trying? So I try to kill God in heaven. So I guess God is trying to pay me back
Right,
on the earth.
right,
Like,
right.
this is just it's buffoonery, man.
Yeah, it is.
But
It really is. It really is.
so you come back from Korea, and I imagine you are super lost in the sauce. You're like, man, now I have the ability to teach, and they're probably making you feel like, man, you have the mission of the 144,000. And so I'm assuming you come back to the US and just light it up. Am I right?
So yeah. So I wanna comment on something that you just kind of made me realize that so yeah, when I came back, but oh man, I might have just forgot it, Edgar. And I was just thinking about it. The fire to preach, the fire to but it wasn't I didn't come back. I didn't come back and so all right, let me explain it like this. So you mentioned something a minute ago, and now, not now, but I throughout the years, I realized there wasn't until people got really strong with the Bible and preaching it. But even when they did, there wasn't many full-fledged Christians who were firm in their faith that were getting baptized in the Church of God, World Mission Society. They weren't. It was people in between. So to be honest, the little things about mother doing this, doing that, and me not feeling it wasn't a big deal for me because I wasn't a Christian. I wasn't like a devout Christian. I had studied the Bible before. I think if I had, then I would have been more skeptical and going, no, 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 this isn't right. I got to get out of here. Like this could be demonic what I'm doing here. This doesn't feel like God. And what am I doing in South Korea? Oh my gosh, what it wasn't like that because I didn't have a Bible base. You know what I
Right.
mean? I hadn't been searching all my life. I hadn't studied scriptures. So to me, what I had been learning, second coming Christ is supposed to come, male, female, I'm going, okay, maybe. So there wasn't this, it wasn't like I came back and said, oh my God, this isn't it. I came back like, all right, some things confused me, but isn't that part of, believing in Christ? Sometimes Satan tries to tempt you. So I snowed over that and then began hardcore recruiting and teaching, preaching, and baptizing. Let that sit in for a second. I go to South Korea and I'm going, I'm not sure. Is this really God? Then I come back and full-fledged preach and baptize into this religion.
Yeah.
Let that sit in. How easy we can just
Yeah, we can be
if we
manipulated.
manipulated. Plus, if we don't have a base,
Yeah,
if you
foundation.
don't have a base of Christianity or who Jesus was and prophecies and this that, you can be easily manipulated into believing Edgar's God
Yeah.
or Ron's God, or anyone's God, because you don't have a solid base to say, wait a minute. So that's a very interesting thing that I didn't come back and go, whoa, I better not mess around because I'm messing with fire if I'm baptizing people into this wrong religion. Didn't
Yeah.
have a thought like that because I didn't quite really believe in a religion up until then.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people who came in and we studied with, who were devout Christians, we'd go back and forth with them, but chances are they would never come back.
Yeah.
It was the ones who were on the fringes,
Yeah.
you know, or questioning something, or angry at their parents because they were raised Christian and they feel like their parents didn't teach them right, or they didn't learn right, and they always had questions, and now they're understanding this. So it was very, very it's kind of weird that I didn't have the mentality to think how detrimental this could be by baptizing people into a false religion,
Yeah.
following a false God. If
Yeah.
you think about that, if you believe in God like I do now, if you believe in God and you think about that, you're like, whoa, I didn't even give that a second thought.
Yeah.
I just kind of everything was moving.
Bro, that's a great point, man. That's a great point because you don't think of those things while you're living it. You don't think of the repercussions, and you're just not thinking. That's the thing,
Yeah,
is you're not thinking. You're
you're
just you're
not thinking.
just working. You're just, what I mean, you're doing everything
They're
fast
thinking
paced.
for you, Edgar. They're
Yes.
thinking for you.
Yeah. You're just a mouthpiece, based. So I would think that, how important is it to have a foundation in biblical Christianity? I think that in itself really is what determines, how susceptible you are to falling into a place like this. Because there's a lot of times that I can remember of many Christians who knew their Bible, who would come into the church, and after a few studies, sometimes even through the first study, they're out the door. They're not just accepting everything that is being said to
That's
them.
right.
They
Yeah,
hear a verse and they're like, wait a second, that's not what that verse means. I've read, above or below that. You're cherry picking. And
yeah,
usually what they would teach us is, when someone does that, it's because they have a bad mind. They're like a Pharisee. They think they already know more than God. Don't waste your time with those people. So
yeah,
in other
yeah.
words, they're conditioning us to only want to think that the only people we need to go after are the people who are just going to accept everything we say, and only these
That's correct.
people are the people of God. But in
That's correct.
reality, if when you look at the Bible, you look at Apollos, you look at Paul, they were on the streets debating. They were debating winning souls for Christ using the Bible. They weren't just, I'm looking for people that are easy to convert. No, let's have a discussion. There's
Yeah,
nothing to hide. I can bring all my arguments in, and one of us has to be right, one of us has to be wrong. And there's none of that in the World Mission Society Church of God. They go after the people who, like you said, don't really have a biblical foundation. And I would say that I was one of those people too. Like, I would call myself a cultural Christian. I think there's a difference between being a Christian, a real Christian, and a cultural Christian. What I mean by that is, there's a lot of people who were raised like me, who I believed in God. My parents taught me to believe in God, but I didn't know who God was. I didn't have a relationship with Jesus. I didn't
mhm,
know really anything about Jesus. I knew he was going to come back, like you said. I knew a little bit here and there, but not enough to be able to give an answer to these people when they're making these bold and outrageous claims. And
you
so,
were you were biblically weak.
exactly.
I was biblically weak. I didn't study the Bible prior to that at all.
Yeah. Yeah, man, and they take advantage of it, and I mean, they have a good structure. They have like a solid way, like a who, what, where, and why of, that. But again, like every cult, they have to start like a problem. They have to create a problem out of thin air in order to offer you the solution. So in the World Mission Society, the first thing that the problem that they create is, we were sinners in heaven who did something. We tried to kill God. We sinned against God, but we don't remember exactly what that sin was. But
Yeah,
because of that sin, we got cast down to the earth. And because of that sin, we're here on this earth, on this death rock that's a prison for our souls, only waiting for the moment that we die. But
yeah,
and so they create this problem, and then they make you feel like, man, yeah, this earth, everything does die, and I'm gonna die. And yeah, if I try to kill God in heaven and I'm a sinner, then I got no hope. Then they
yep,
say, here's the solution. The solution is, you need to keep the Passover. And then they'll tell you the Passover was destroyed by Constantine, and they'll go over this false history to basically get you to the point to where you feel like you need them. You need the guy who brought back the Passover, and then they
that's right.
introduced An San Hong, and so it's pretty
That's right.
manipulative, the way that cults work, and it's crazy to hear you say that, man. But yeah, unfortunately, that's how they.
We all, I mean, everybody who on earth walks around and says I'm righteous. Everyone knows we're sinners. All they did was put a little twist to it to make it a more grand story about the sin, you know.
Yeah,
Um, and it was an interesting story, that's for sure. The problem was we knew Edgar, we knew every here's the thing with any cult or anyone really. If you know what someone's doctrine is biblically, in the Bible, because the Bible is it's such an incredible book. But if you know a doctrine, like you can take a doctrine, JW doctrine, if you know their doctrine and you just take the Bible and find passages to contradict their doctrine. So now, if you're going up against a JW, you know exactly what they're going to ask, you know where to go to contradict it, and you shut them down.
Yeah.
Easy. That's how the fighting was done. That's how the military style was done. The problem with that is that uh, it's from everything I know about the Bible now, it's not about knowing the Bible. It's not about knowing every verse. It's not about the proof is no longer needed. Jesus is the Christ. Yes, that's already been proven. 2,000 years of history proved it. It didn't go
Yeah.
away,
Yeah.
which means it's solidified. So the real issue is the faith and a lot of those things that I looked at as, oh, that's just weak, just saying faith, or just, but those things are so profound now to me, more so than just connecting a scripture with a scripture.
Yeah.
That seems ridiculous now. And
Yeah.
the other part of the emotion, John told me one time, and it was so weird. He said, Ron, the problem with Americans is they only show love outwardly. Because, they they kind of thought it was strange if Americans were always like, what's up, hugging, and they
Yeah.
just thought all of that outwardly stuff, but inwardly we didn't have the real love of Christ. But outwardly we were always expressing that kind of stuff. Because I think at one point, I think I might have asked John, like, you got Koreans, Asians don't show a lot of affection. And he said, oh, we show love differently, Ron. Americans outwardly like that or whatever, but we show love by explaining Christ so that people can be saved. And it was just like, so does it mean it's wrong to and do
Yeah.
all that? It's just so mind blowing of the it it destroys the simplicity of what was already done for us.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at right now. And that's where I used to look at others and go, oh my God, you think it's just that easy? Yeah, it's the simplicity of what Jesus already did
Yeah.
that allows us to. We wouldn't be able to do anything. We could know all the scriptures we want, we could know all the verses, and we could destroy everyone with all the verses and still not get there. So it's the simplicity that I came to realize. And then when you realize that, then you see the structure the other way and go, wow, that was just a battle. That was just a fight to convert, you know.
No, man, I love what you said because it's true, the simplicity of it. And when one thing that I've understood from cults is that cults will always preach do, 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 do. And the real gospel says done.
Done.
And it's a huge difference. It's a huge difference. And even when you said, that how you say you feel about Jesus now, right? How you feel about God, the simplicity of it, of what he already accomplished for us.
Mhm.
How is it that you went to go meet this lady in person? These people meet this lady in person. People walked with An San Hong in person and feel nothing. And yet Jesus, who existed 2,000 years ago, and yet the relationship feels more alive than the people that you actually met in person.
Crazy. Great point.
Totally different, right?
Great point. That's a great point. How is that? That's really a good point, Edgar, actually. I don't know if you made a really, really uh mind thinking point to make you think. Like, how is that possible?
Yeah.
And
And
but yet it's true.
yeah, man.
But yet
And
it's true.
man, it's just crazy, man. It's mind boggling, and it's sobering to really think about it, man. What this place did to us, and even how you mentioned about them weaponizing the Bible. That's 100% accurate, and I think that in there lies the answer. Why members cannot feel like they ever have, like in my situation, many ex-members that I talked to, they never felt that they had any peace, and
Yeah.
that's because you don't leave that place understanding the Bible. When I was in there, I love to hear, oh, brother Edgar, you study the Bible so well, you know the Bible so well. When I left, I came to realize I didn't know the Bible at all. What I
Hmm.
knew about the Bible is exactly what you're saying. I learned arguments, how to argue the Bible. But
Yep,
learning
that's right.
arguments and how to combat other cults is different than
Very different.
understanding the
That's
scriptures, you know?
correct. Yeah, that's correct. That's a great point because that's what the focus was. How do we prove them wrong?
Yeah.
That was the
Yeah.
mindset.
And so you're not even reading at that point, you're not even reading the Bible to try to understand it. You're reading it to get one up on the next person that you're studying with, you know?
Right. And the ironic part is that when I think about it, like 2000 years ago, okay, so let's say Ansang Hong came, he wrote all these books, these teachings of how to recognize him, the prophecies, whatever. But yet he's the same Jesus 2000 years ago. When Jesus came, he didn't write any teachings. There wasn't studies that he said, connect this with this, put this together. Not even the disciples did that. They could have left the green book, brown book in the Bible and said, this is how you're supposed to study it. This is me, John, telling you, you know how Christians are going to believe me in the future, John and Paul. They
Yeah.
could have said, connect these, here's the scripture, but they didn't. It was about, this is the Christ, believe in him and you're saved. It wasn't about battling everyone else. It was like, he came from here, he did this, he did that. Do you believe in him? Yeah, if he did that and the Bible says, okay, then you're saved. It wasn't about it, there was no instructions of what you have to do further
Yeah.
to be saved. It stopped right there, which makes sense to me because if there was something to do further, then it takes the power off of God giving you that
Yeah.
because then you did something for it.
Right.
And I used to think so reversed over that. I can't tell you how my mind was so reversed
Yeah.
and how it got reversed. I have no idea. But the simplicity, when I think about God now, is why would God um, want be wanting us to know all the verses, conquer all these people, rip them apart, to show that we love God and we're godly?
Yeah.
Wouldn't I be able to go up there and say, no, did you see how much I studied? Did you see how much
Yeah.
I was the best preacher ever? But it's not like that because then we could give credit to ourselves. Where it's always Jesus is always talking about you're saved because you recognized me.
Yeah.
There was nothing else. There was no brown book, green book, sermon book, this book, and how to spread it. It was just show them the verses about me. If they believe about me, they're golden.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
man.
the difference between a cult. You have to learn all their studies, all their scriptures, all their books put together. And I think if anyone who's watching had to recognize if any church has to put together books, whether it be JW or anyone, put together their own set of books to show you how to show the Bible, then
Something's wrong there.
something's wrong because I don't know if they had to do that 2000 years ago. I don't remember them going to schools to learn how to teach and preach. I think they just said, Holy Spirit, and then I'm going to go out and show the verses that testify about you. Anyone
Yeah.
who comes and believes, they're saved.
Yeah.
It was pretty simple. We
Yeah,
make it
man.
complicated, but it's pretty
Yeah.
simple.
And yeah, to your point, I mean, that's exactly what they do. They give you this literature, all these cults give you this literature, but there's a reason behind it. The reason they got to give you all this literature for you to understand about their cult is because they're when you read this literature, when you receive it from them, we're not realizing that we're trading in our honest understanding of the Bible because they're giving us lenses through
Yep.
which to view the Bible. When you read their literature, you can't understand the Bible for yourself. You
In
are
its
now
entirety.
looking at it through their lenses, through what is written in their literature. They're telling you what the verses mean. They're telling you this verse connects to this verse and connects to this verse and connects to this. And so when you go back to try to read the Bible for yourself, you can only see their interpretation of
Well, yeah, but Edgar, you got to be careful because there's traps in the Bible. That's what they say.
it. Yeah.
Don't look on the outside of these studies
Yeah.
because there's traps. Jonah Park told me one time. He said there's three parts of the Bible. There's those that which man jumbled because it's written by man. Satan has a little part in there because he distorted things, and then there's God's absolute truth. But the only one that can lead you is you have to recognize the Christ, And then the Christ has to tell you what's what in the Bible.
Yeah.
And also, he showed me this verse one time. It was very controversial, and he waited until I was there for about 2.5 weeks. And he read this verse, and he had such a style to him. I will say that, Jonah Park. And he told me to read this verse, and it says, he said, "Be as innocent." He said, "Be as innocent as doves, but as sneaky as snakes."
Yeah.
And then he asked me, "What does that mean?" And I said, "I just to be innocent like a dove." He said, "Is Jesus telling them to lie?" And I said, "No, of course not. Jesus wouldn't do that." He said, "Be as innocent as doves, but as sneaky as snakes." He said, "Who is the snake?" Satan. Is Jesus telling us to be like Satan, the father of lies? He literally told me, yes, he was, because the innocent as doves, when you tell the lie, it's an innocent as dove lie to lead people to the truth. So Jesus was telling it's okay to lie if you're trying to bring someone to the truth. That was explained to me. And I bought
Wow.
it, hook, line, and sinker. It made sense at the time. I said, Jesus is saying, sneaky as doves, innocent as doves, sneaky as snakes. God, it makes sense.
Wow, man. It's so crazy to how they're blatantly telling you that it's okay to lie. The dishonesty
Yeah,
from the very beginning, man. And it shows a lot about the true characters of this place. And for those who do believe in God, those who do believe in the scripture, even I'm talking to the members inside the World Mission Society. Jesus said 2,000 years ago, by their fruit you will recognize them. If one of this place's fruits is lies and deceptions, that tells you a lot about the insides, the bones of this kind of place,
that's
this
right.
organization.
And
um
and Edgar, I need to say this real quick because while we're on this subject, because um, by doing that, I can't tell you how many brothers, sisters that I counseled that were so distraught um, over questions they had, and they felt so guilty for even doubting and questioned. You could see the anguish on their face. You could see the internal spiritual battle going on as I told them, "You got to believe in Father. I know Satan is always trying to confuse us, but remember, believe in Father." Do you know I have some people who are still there that I talk to? Michael Flanagan. Oh, probably shouldn't say it online. Maybe he's going to get in trouble. Sometimes I'll reach out to Mike Flanagan. He was a really good brother. He had two sons, and the only reason why he's still there, he tells me, up until maybe 2 or 3 years ago, last time I talked to him, and I remember telling the men's group, even if I fall away, stay with father and mother. Because even I can fall. They're like, "Missionary, you never fall away." I said, even if I do, stay with father and mother, because it's a test. It's a test to see if you would fall away following me instead of following mother. Now, when I talked to Mike after I came out several years later, he'd be like, "Missionary, he still calls me missionary. Even when he talks to me 2, 3 years ago, he's like, "Missionary Ron." And he's like, you told me, remember? And I'm like, "Yeah, I did tell you that. Gosh, I did." God, that puts me in a bad spot when I find out the truth to
yeah,
try to talk to people that I said, "Hey, I could fall away too. Be careful, because that might be Satan trying to test you."
yeah,
How do you, the brainwashing is layers, Edgar.
yeah,
It's layers. It's not just from them anymore. It's from your fellow brothers and sisters in the church. It's layers upon layers of brainwashing. It's layers upon layers of different things being told to you. And it's not an easy task to get out. Something has to happen. Something has to either spark with you. I know all these cult experts, Steve Hassan and all these, let's meet, let's do a intervention. I don't know how much that works. I don't know the results of that. I imagine it's extremely low from my own experience with Steve. Um, but the real thing that has to happen is there has to be something. There has to be like most cults, there has to be like the government steps in, there's some fraud going on, there's some scams going on where it's like a meme change. It's like the earth is flat and now we find out it's round. It's like
yeah,
within a day when we found that out, there was no one really trailing around still saying the earth is flat. It was like, we know it, it's done, proven science. And it's kind of like that. There has to be something big. It's a never ending battle. Once this thing gets started, good luck.
yeah,
Good luck really bringing them down. It's going to take a scandal of some sort. It's going to take something a little bit bigger than than what's been happening. And it's good to get information out. Don't get me wrong. You don't
Yeah.
stop because it's not going to be the big meme change or the big shift. You don't stop doing it. But I'm just saying that because how hard it is. I want people to understand how hard
Yeah.
it is when you have layers. I was one of the layers. I was brainwashed, but I'm a layer of brainwashing too.
Yeah.
I was a layer of brainwashing.
Yeah.
And that's the part that makes it difficult and hard to come out. It's not just what the leader said, it's not just what the pastor said, it's what the brothers and sisters said, it's what your best buddy in the church said, it's what your leader said, it's what it's a lot of layers.
Yeah, man, and that's true. I mean, there's so many different reasons to stay in, and when people do come out, you know, sometimes you hear it's because they're burned out. They've been run ragged, you know. Sometimes one thing that I've seen, most commonly is you hit a certain age. And when you hit a certain age, you start thinking and examining things more and you start asking questions. And when you're younger, sometimes you don't ask these questions, you know? And
Yeah,
so I think that being said, man, it is very difficult to leave this cult, and any cult for that matter, because of the layers of brainwashing. But I will say that as of recently, there's so many people that are leaving. There are a lot of
yeah,
people that are
yeah,
reaching out, and a lot of that is because uh ironically the internet, now, there's so much many more people speaking out. And again, this is again kudos to you, man, because people like you, people like Michelle, that had the courage to speak out. Now, they labeled you guys as crazy and demon possessed and everything, but you're seeing the fruits of that now because there's so many more people that are speaking out, that have
yeah,
platforms, that are on social media, that are spreading awareness. And now they can't call, it was easy to call one person, two people, three people crazy. Now when you have hundreds of people telling the same story, now they have a problem on their hands because there's
yeah.
powers in numbers. And so I think slowly but surely, we're starting to see people waking up. But like you said, it's still difficult, and it does take some. I think that something does have to give in order for a huge wave of members to leave. And I think honestly, Ron, what it's
In
gonna
waves.
take is, Zongil John, and I'm not wishing anything upon her, but she is human. When she passes, there will be a lot of members who were there that strictly remember being told she would not die. She would
Yeah.
ascend alive with 144,000. I think when that day comes, that will be the wake up call for a lot of members to leave that place. But
Well, here's
unfortunately, there's also going to be some members that are going to stay because they will be told another prophecy.
yeah. So here's the thing with that, Edgar. I would have definitely agreed with that 100%, maybe 8 years ago, 7 years ago. But now they've shifted. So the shift is I don't know if many people study about mother won't die until we all go to heaven. I don't know if they're still preaching that
They're
because
not.
they openly preach that. They said mother cannot die without taking her children with her. So I just don't know the inner structures. I know that when I left, there was a lot of changes being made. They weren't doing the deep studies anymore. It was just Sabbath, Passover, mother, father. Let's get people believing, and then let's get them to work in preaching, recruiting, and things like basics.
Yeah.
Basics. None of these deep studies. Let's get soldiers on board, the youth. You know,
Yeah.
so I don't know if even if she died, some people might go like they did when I said when I had made what was the thing that I said? Oh, when I had said 2012, and people said I never studied that. He's lying. I never studied that. I know because you joined in 2011 and they weren't teaching it anymore because 2012, or you joined in 2012 and it wasn't happening. So now they weren't preaching that anymore.
Yeah.
If you were in 2009, you thought 12 was the end. If you were
Yeah.
in 10, you thought 12 was the end. But as 12 got closer, then the shifting changed because the messaging had to change. So I don't know if they're still learning that if mother dies, we're all going to be in heaven. that was the foundation, man. There was
Yeah.
there was no way we're here if mother dies. That was a guarantee.
And they're already changing that. They're already changing that. They're already removing the new songs that talked about us, being transformed in a twinkling of an eye, holding on to the hands of mother as we ascend. They're
Yeah.
ripping they ripped
Wow.
those pages off because, like you said, they're switching course because they know it's going to happen, just like the 2012 thing. And ironically, and maybe this is what we can get into next. I'm so glad you brought up the 2012 because, like you said, maybe on the West Coast, once you guys hit 2011, it wasn't being preached anymore. You said they switched into more, simplistic way of studying, the truth, right? But in the Midwest, we got a pastor named Pastor Daniel Park, and he didn't shy away from those prophecies. So when I came in 2010, he
Yeah.
was very much still preaching 2012 is the end of the world. And I remember being told, I even have it written in my agenda from 2012 that, on the last and greatest day of the Feast of Tabernacles, that was it. That was supposed to be the end, because what was supposed to
We
happen
are the
is, yeah, the prophecy went that Moses was told after the Day of Atonement to collect the material for the heavenly sanctuary. And it
Yep.
took 168 days in order to prepare all the material for the heavenly sanctuary. And after the 168 days, Moses was told in Exodus chapter 34 or 36, he was told, bring no more material. Tell the Israelites, no more. We have more than enough. And the voice from the temple came, it's done, right? We have more than enough material. And they say that's the shadow. The reality is, in the New Testament time, the spiritual Day of Atonement was 1844. That
Yeah.
is when truth began to creep back into the
Right.
church, like the Seventh Day Adventists and
Ellen G.
the
White
truth,
was a
Ellen
true
G.
prophet,
White,
we said.
yeah, the truth of baptism. And so the 1844 is the spiritual Day of Atonement. So that's when you need to begin to bring in the material. And so from
And
eight
1844, don't forget the 120, which brings us to 1964, which was a
yeah,
biblical reference to them too.
yeah, when that the church gets established according to the prophecy of the temples.
Yeah.
But they say, so in the Day of Atonement in the Old Testament, it took 168 days to complete the spiritual tabernacle. Well,
Yeah.
from 1844, it would take 168 years to complete the spiritual heavenly tabernacle, the Jerusalem temple. So 1844 plus 168 years lands at 2012. And so
Exactly.
on 2012, on the last and greatest day of the Feast of Tabernacles, we were told the
We were
voice from the
supposed
temple would say, no more material. 144,000 are found. It's time to go to heaven. But what happened is, when it
mother's
got
kindness, mother's love, mother's
exactly,
love.
exactly, exactly. And it's wow. I mean, just thinking back at that time, I mean, they had us prepare candles, canned food, bottled waters. Missionary Michael would tell us, like, prepare sleeping bags and, all kinds of stuff, and
Yep.
in preparation. And then once it didn't happen, it's like we're just to pretend that, we never heard it. And I remember they even try to tell us, oh brother, no, you misunderstood. That didn't come from mother. That came
Yeah.
from the leader's misunderstanding or
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
misunderstanding.
Yeah. Like what I taught didn't come from John or Pastor Daniel or mother or the senior pastors. It was my own teaching, even though I was teaching in the church in front of all members that were going out and teaching it too and telling other people about it. It was
Yeah,
it's a great way to say to obfuscate any guilt. It's like I never did you hear me teach that?
yeah.
It's a
And
joke.
have you ever been so brainwashed? Like, did you ever feel this wrong? Like, so brainwashed that even though you knew that that's what was said, even though you preached it yourself, once you started hearing them like switching course and saying, we never said that, and you went ahead with it. I know I
So
did.
So I wasn't there when the switching course
Okay.
happened. So I left in 2011, and I can't tell you that I was in my head and at the edge of my seat, and mentally I was like, I can't believe I'm leaving before 2012. I can't believe that I'm falling away before the greatest time. And this has been talked about. Do not leave mother. 2012 is it. Don't leave mother. And here I am, 2011, because of what I found out. And I'm in my head going, it, I'm just not chosen. Satan is messing with me. And literally until 2012 ended, I was a little bit in my head going crazy, like this is insane. And not to mention when I moved from California to Texas in 2011, around the corner from my house, go figure, here in Texas, was in a little outlet, a little strip mall, was a little corner place, Church of God World Mission Society, walking distance from my apartment. And I'm going, okay, I am really in trouble. Mother's reaching out to me, and I'm doomed.
Yeah.
2012 came and went, and anyone, I will meet with anyone. John, Daniel Park, Mother, uh, Peter, whoever, Daniel Lee. I'll meet with anyone, and we can go right on here on this little camera, YouTube, and I'll say, was 2012 taught to me or not? You're an honest guy. You're a godly man. You have the truth of God. You're with the second coming of the Messiah of Christ. Did you teach me 2012 or not? Was that ever taught in the church? And I would like to see them lie, because that's what it would be if they said no.
Wow.
There's only two ways they can say no, we did not, which would be a lie, 100%. And their parishioners would know it, the mics and the early people, if they came on camera. Here's my challenge to them. Come on camera. Come on camera and say you did not say 2012. Because I even said several times to John, I said, John, do you think one day the whole world will know about mother? He said, yeah, there's going to be an announcement about mother. Well, where is it? Where's the boldness of coming on camera and saying 2012 we did preach it, and this is the reason why it didn't happen, and here's the biblical evidence why it didn't? And then I might rejoin the church. I might go, oh my goodness, I missed that. That's what it was. No, I wouldn't. I'm just saying. But but it would at least you could prove yourself to be more of an honest broker.
Yeah.
Be an honest broker. You taught it. I taught it because I learned it from you.
Yeah.
I didn't come up, I don't have the ability to come up with a 2012 prophecy. I learned it in the church and I taught it.
Yeah.
And I learned it from Daniel Park and John Lee and all of them. So just come on and say, yeah, 2012 was. The part that gets me, that really makes me angry, is that I know they're a cult, is they're saying they did not teach that. And that is such a blatant lie. It's the biggest blatant lie that everyone in the church that was in the church with me then, unless they heard some, and if they did, I don't know why they wouldn't begin preaching that, unless they heard that there's another prophecy that says like this. But if there was, then teach the false 2012 prophecy and then teach the new prophecy that goes like that. Be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
Be honest brokers. Don't say
And
you didn't do it, and only teach the ones that learned it that there's a new prophecy. The ones that are fully brainwashed, they go, yeah, I know we taught that, but mother just showed us a new prophecy. This one here, she's given
yeah.
more time for more repentance. That's mother's love. She wants everyone to be saved. It's
Yeah.
like, come on, where does it end?
I
To what
love it.
end?
I love it, Ron. Speak your facts, man.
Yeah.
I love that you're bringing all the smoke, and you're hearing it here first. He's calling out Pastor Daniel Park, Zangyo Ja, General
Yeah.
Pastor, anybody. Come on
Let's go.
and let's see if you guys didn't say that the end would happen in 2012. And we got receipts. I got receipts. I got the studies. I got the feast. I got my notebooks. I got
Edgar,
stacks of notebooks.
Edgar, they said I'm Judas. I'm Judas Iscariot. What a great way to point out Judas Iscariot and have the world amazed. Let's go on.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's
The
do it,
world would
man.
be amazed.
And you know,
Mother can be revealed, and I can be a false prophet, and the gospel will become even bigger. I don't know, but at least come on and address it. Don't not address it.
but
You taught it, address it.
They never will, Ron. Spoiler alert. They
No,
won't
because
come
they're a
in.
cult. Because
Yeah.
they're a cult.
We I've been
That's the reason.
I've been calling them out for years, man, and they will
Yeah.
not come on. I've ran into the missionary at Walmart. He ran away. I challenged him to a debate twice. He ran away, man. And it's so crazy to me that these people spend their whole day going out and trying to
I know.
recruit people until they run
I
into
know.
someone who knows their facts. And
I know.
so, when you and the thing is, when you mentioned about do they have a, because you left in 2011, they did have an eraser prophecy for the 2012. It was basically a two-liner. They're like, go to this verse. I think I have it written down. I think it
Really?
was, yeah, it's Exodus chapter 39, verse 43. And
Long time in coming, and they
it's
thought he was coming.
that's part of it. But what they'll say is that was the inspection time of the temple. And so they
Yeah.
say after 2012, the spiritual temple was supposed to be complete. We were supposed to go to heaven alive with mother, but we missed something. After 2012, they began to teach now is the time of the spiritual inspection. In other words, now that the temple is
I
complete,
heard that.
now it
Yeah.
has to be
Yeah.
inspected. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
wait a second. Well, how long does inspection last? Because 2012, if I'm not mistaken, that's what, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13 years ago. And
I
so,
think Yeah, I think our government could have inspected a lot quicker, and we're flawed. Well, what about God? He should just be able to look once down and go, "Yep, good, let's go."
exactly. And then how many prophecies how many failed prophecies have they had since then?
Yeah,
You left in 2012, but after that it was 2015, then it was 2017, then
yeah, I know.
2018, then 2020. And so it's
Yeah,
like every year is the end with these people. So
I know.
it's so
You know
crazy,
what the
man.
sad part is, Edgar? To be honest, and I'm gonna invoke a name, and I hope he doesn't get mad. He's not in the church anymore, but Chris Hebert is the thing he's the one that stands out to me a lot because Chris Hebert was this 330-pound brother, black guy, and the most nicest guy you ever want to meet. He was just he loved God, he loved the church, he loved he really wanted to do the right thing, and a lot of times he was in turmoil a lot in his face, but he could have been when I played soccer with him. He was 330 pounds. He could fly by me. He could run by me like I was standing still, and his movements were. But he played football in high school, and then he got a scholarship for college, and he would have been he would have been phenomenal, phenomenal. The kid was going to do something. I know it for a fact, only because I played basketball with him too, and I never saw. When 330 pounds can move like that, then you're talking about linebackers, and
Yeah.
you're talking about those are perfect position people on the field with that weight, that size, and that mobility. Those are the ones that make it big, and he had all of that. And I remember him telling me, he's like, man, he goes, I don't want to go to school anymore. I don't care about my scholarship. And I remember telling them, listen, it's up to you, Chris, but we're going home soon. I told them that. I said, we're going home soon. What's it all for? So it's people like that lost their whatever their future might have brought. Or, might have, who knows, could have been a bad thing. Could have been a good thing. I don't know. He could have done sports and been a drug addict, or he could have done sports and broke his neck. I don't know. But what I'm saying is to affect with lies, to affect someone's natural progression of what they were going to do because of your lies. And I call them my lie. I mean, it was my lie, but I didn't know. So there's different types of lies, but I'm teaching him based on what I've been taught. So the real liar is the real villain here um is Zhang Jiujia and her band of her band of evildoers.
Yeah.
Because they know.
Yeah, man.
Because they
And
know.
and
They know. And I'm pretty certain they know now. I didn't always know that they knew, but I do know that they know now because you can't change prophecies around and find some things that support that after you send out your minions to find verses that can support that, and then you put it out there to the church. So
yeah,
yeah,
man.
he was going to be something either way, and there's a lot of people like that. He's not the only one. He just stands out to me a lot, but there was a lot of people like that. They gave up um, gave up what they were gonna do, what their dreams were. And I'm not talking now. A lot of times these kids don't know how to have ambitions and dreams. They have hopelessness. I'm talking about back in 90, 98, 99, 2000. Yeah, kids are coming out of high school wanting to be something in life, wanting college and school and what they were going to do and be and having fun, going out partying with their friends and the college life. That was gone. When you entered the cult, that
Yeah,
was done.
yeah.
That was done. Those
And
dreams are over.
I came into the church at 18 years old. I
Did you
let,
really? I didn't know
yeah,
your story, Edgar. I haven't heard your story yet, to be honest. I hope you tell me it, but
yeah,
I
man.
haven't heard yours, to
I
be
was
honest.
I was 18. I left when I was pretty much 30. So
Wow.
all my 20s were lost in that place,
Wow.
and honestly, I'm not sour about it. I always look at it as I try to
Me too.
think of the positive things
Me
that
too.
came out of it, because there's no point of crying over spilled milk. But when I remember of like what you were saying, there's so many people that were so talented, and it's the greatest what if. And there's
Yep.
so many people. I remember, when Daniel Park was preaching the end of the world in 2015, there was people who were, donating their lands that they had, that their inheritance they received from their families, and selling. I remember I sold my SUV. Well, like, we had a church wide garage sale because they were telling us this is the last Advent movement.
That's it.
We need to get rid of everything. And you lose so much in this place, but I
Yeah.
think the most precious thing that you lose is time. But that being said, man, like,
You might want to look this up. You might want to look this up. It might be good information for you. And I know his name and everything, which is good. Mike Weston. Have you ever heard of Mike Weston?
no.
Mike Weston. Edit this if I'm not allowed to say this, please.
Yeah.
I'm trusting you. He had a long-standing lawsuit. From what I know, he was. I think it was a long-standing lawsuit. Something happened to him when he was young. He had a lawsuit going. Um, and he was in the church for a while. He was kind of a rebel type in the church, but he believed. He was a good guy and he believed. He had a ranch in California right around the corner from Sunland Church. And it's where Charlie Manson, the Manson crew
Mhm.
used to hang out up there. I used to go on his ranch and we'd go and see where they carved in the stones. Charles Manson's group carved in the stones up there. And he got his inheritance of his lawsuit. It was 1 point something million. You got to figure back in 2003, 4, 5, right around there. And he gave his 10% to the church. Reluctant. I remember there was that period of time because I was kind of not involved with it, but I was like, is he gonna? He got the settlement, and we're all waiting to see what Mike West was gonna do, Weston. And I think he gave like 100 and something thousand. He gave 10%, but he stopped believing. That was right around the time he came out of the church, about a year after that, 6 months, a year after that, because he had found out some stuff or whatever. And I can't remember the years. I might be discombobulated on the years, to be honest. But he went after them to get that money back, and I never knew what happened with that. But there could be
Uh,
some lawsuit that he tried. I think, because I remember John telling me, Mike Weston, what's wrong with him? He lost his mind, and now he wants his tithing back from God. And I was like, wow, I can't believe it. But I don't know how it ended. Um, but I think they gave his money back, or he sued them, or he was going to take them to court. But I think he got his money back. But he did give 100 something thousand dollars, which was pretty good.
what's wild to me, Ron, is that I hear of all these stories, and I speak to people all over the world, and they're like, "Man, I donated this, I gave this much money." And one thing that's always been like kind of funny to me is like, I don't know if you lived through this, but a lot of members saw this every time one of the people that wrote a new song fell out of the church, and there's been many, they will take away the new song
Yeah,
as if the person who gave this to God, who gave this offering to God, because he fell away, what they offer to God is no longer
yeah,
worthy, right? And so it needs to be done away with.
yeah.
Give it back. They can take it back. So the new songs, take it back. If you fall away, take it back. We don't need it. But when it comes to tithe and offering, and
Yeah,
someone falls away, oh, that's still worthy, right? That's still good for the Cadillac
yeah.
fund, right?
Yeah, you think they would be like, "Hey, you fell away, take all of it back." God doesn't want any of it.
Yeah. You know what's crazy is even the Pharisees and Sadducees, when Judas betrayed Jesus for 30 silver coins,
That's
he
right.
tried to
Yeah,
give the 30 silver coins back.
that's
And
right.
even they said, we don't want it. That's blood money. These people, oh, add it up, right? Cadillac fund.
Bring it. Yeah,
It's
bring it. It's already spent. I'm sorry. We already purchased three new churches. We can't give it back.
it's so wild to me, man.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, man. Just because in the other interviews that I've heard you talk on, you didn't go into that much detail on Pastor Daniel Park because I know you were, you were more on West Coast, and so the people that were asking you, they're asking you from that perspective. But I talked to a lot of people in the Midwest, and right now there's a big situation going on where Pastor Daniel Park has gone rogue and is now started his own church, which is called New Jerusalem Church of God. And he's
Wow.
basically claiming that general pastor is Esau, and he's basically got this mission of Jacob and
Jacob.
the last prophecy of of the child of promise. His church is the child of promise, and he's coming up with all these prophecies that he came up out of that he came up with in thin air. And so my question to you is, does this surprise you, or can you tell me how Pastor Daniel Park was when you met him? Compared to other pastors in the church, did he have that ability to teach that was a little bit different than everyone else?
Oh, Daniel Park was the best. He was the top teacher. Him and Daniel Lee. Daniel Lee in New York was a little. He was known for his preaching, but he was known for strictness. Daniel Park was strictly known throughout all the churches. You wanted to learn studies from Daniel Park.
No.
He was going to get into it. He was going to go deep. I like Daniel Park. He reminded me. He was kind of a builder. We did a lot of churches and built this and built that. He liked doing things, structural things, and he liked teaching, and he certainly loved being at the church. Him and his deaconess, his wife, were at the church all the time. Pastor Daniel Park seemed to be. I could see him doing this. I could see Daniel Lee doing it too,
Yeah.
because I think that anyone who's been in it long enough and 2012 passed, one of two things is going to happen. You're going to stay in the church, and they need to be paying you something to stay, or you're going to start your own church and break away, because I know for a fact that Daniel Lee and Pastor Daniel Park, they knew well about 2012.
Yeah.
So if 2012 passed, I think even if we didn't know it, there was a shaking in the church that maybe we weren't aware of.
Yeah.
And Daniel Lee may be the product of that shaking.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a good thing, because when a pastor leaves like that, like Joseph Kong left too. Joseph Kong left early on. He must have saw something, because he left really early on. Um, but Daniel Lee, Daniel Park, I can see that. I can see him doing his own church. He had a good skill
Yeah.
for opening a church, teaching in a church, building a church, construction of a church. I can see him using his own skills and being like, "Hey, maybe I'll make money this way."
Yeah.
Because when 2012 came, I told you the story. I think I told you when we talked, that how Daniel Park, and he was serious when he came back from Korea in 2008, 9, maybe 8 or 9. He did a sermon, and he had a 5-year visa, and he told us, it was in a sermon, and he said, "Mother said his visa will be here longer than we'll be here." And you know how it goes. After the
Yeah.
sermons, how it goes. Everyone's like, and they're coming to me, and they're like, "Missionary, does that mean even before we could go, or we're going to go soon?" And I said, "We don't know, but definitely not. It's not going to go past 2012." And so he must have believed it unless he knew it wasn't real even then.
Yeah.
But who's to say? How
And
long
here
was he teaching not knowing it's real?
and
Because he was a part of the brainwashing too. Who knows? This thing gets so deep.
and here we are in 2025. And
Imagine that.
the thing about Daniel Park, man, is I honestly believe, like you said in the beginning, I believe he really believed it. But now this guy he's just basically paying back General Pastor for what he did to him, because I've talked to people in Korea. I talked to a lot of senior pastors in Korea. They kind of know the story of how it happened in the beginning. And Daniel Park and General Pastor never had a good relationship, from what I hear, because General Pastor was always kind of intimidated by Daniel Park's ability to teach. And
And
so,
yeah, General Pastor was not a good sermon giver. When I
yeah.
heard General Pastor's sermons, I wasn't moved. I was a lot more moved when I heard Pastor Parks. Trust me,
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
was a lot more moved.
Man, I would say General Pastor is the cure for a General Pastor sermon is the cure for insomnia. You,
Sabbath, Passover,
yeah,
basic stuff. It was like, okay,
yeah, man. I mean,
we weren't looking forward to it.
I'm telling you, we're listening to General Pastor sermon on the Sabbath in the morning, and that was like a boot camp, man. I mean, it was torture.
Yeah,
I remember
I
me and
know.
the brothers used to pinch our thighs and stab our
Yeah.
thighs with pins just to try to stay awake, during
Well, it was
during the
you knew it was
sermon.
going to be like about the Passover, something very, very simple.
Yeah.
He was going to teach about. But you know what's funny is it'd be worthy to look into, and I don't know if you do, Edgar. You're more of a researcher than me, and you've been following this a little bit more. It would be worthy to look into what was the shakeup after 2012, because I can tell you when I went there, the people that I met, the people that were like, "We love you," crying and shaking when they saw me, because the West was coming now to the East to honor and worship Mother. From the West to the East, the nobles would be coming and paying homage to Mother, who is the true Christ. I'm wondering, they must have known about 2012 too. I'm wondering what the shakeup was there. It's such a disconnect because it's South Korea and United
Oh,
States.
I got something for you. People definitely
Really?
got shook up in Korea because one of the senior pastors, Kim, C.W. Kim, his room was right across the hall from Zangyoja's office. He witnessed a lot of the stuff go down, in the Jerusalem temple. He was high up, he was in the inner circle, as they say, because he still currently has a
Was
job
he
in the
one of was he one of the senior pastors?
Yes, he was one of the senior pastors. And
I
after the
remember
whole
him.
2012 debacle, he actually left the church and he wrote letters to General Pastor confronting him about the false prophecy,
Wow.
demanding an explanation or an
Interesting.
apology. He refused, obviously, so he leaves the church. He actually gets in contact with Ansan Hong's original church, which is the COGJW, and now he's one of the two that actually operates and runs Ansan Hong's original church. And
Wow.
so, yeah, man.
Interesting.
And there's so like they're at least more honest than the World Mission Society could ever dream of being, because
Does
they
he it, does
go ahead.
he does he is he acknowledging that it was a cult, or does he acknowledge that it was not
Oh no,
a failed prophecies?
he straight up says it's a cult, and that was false prophecy. And there's
Interesting.
a lot of people in Korea that the 2012 thing, it was a nail in the coffin, But I
Wow.
think that just like I'm saying, even now with whatever prophecies are being thrown out there, because they're a doomsday cult. I mean, they continue. 2012 wasn't the end, and it wasn't the beginning either. They had already
Yeah.
done this in 1988,
That's right. That's
1999,
right.
2012,
That's right.
2015, 2018. So, it's not new to them, man. They're gonna
That's
keep
right.
doing this, and so the way that I see it is just like every other cult. There's gonna be waves. There's gonna be when she passes, there's gonna be a wave of members that leave, and there's gonna be a new wave of members that come in, and also a wave of member that stays. And that's just how it is,
And
man.
I always felt it was just going to turn into just a general religion like Jehovah Witnesses. It's just going to be established, and that's it. And there's no more end day prophecies. I just thought they would still after mother or the mother dies or whatever, that it's just going to be a regular religion that was established based on lies, but now it's an established religion where they're not even talking about the end time, they're just talking about the teachings of Christ.
Yeah,
And they got all
you would think they would have learned their lessons, but
yeah,
but
yeah.
some people some people learn from their mistakes, some people learn from other people's mistakes, and some people never learn.
Just don't.
And I think that they're just in that category, but hey man, to each his own.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
Ron, let me ask you this, man. Obviously, let me address the elephant in the room, because you're famous. I think you got more famous, obviously everyone in the West Coast, they know you, right? But like to us in the Midwest, to us in the East Coast, like we didn't know you like that.
right.
How we got to know Ron was through that silly cartoon that they made addressing your video, which actually made me want to see your video.
Right,
So
right.
obviously you've seen the cartoon, man. It was crappy,
Yeah.
but let me get your thoughts on that, man.
Listen, it, I, I can't. So let me just go back to cartoons for a second, seeing that you brought up cartoons. So
Okay.
when I left the church, and then we'll get to that, but when I left the church, um, I said I was taking a break. I told John I was taking a break. And I had actually missed a Sabbath, which is unheard of. Missionary Ron's not here on a Sabbath. It caused, the whispers all around the church. Like, where's Missionary Ron? You don't miss a Sabbath day. I could never not be there on a Sabbath. That would be unheard of, unless I was out of town, but that's not the case. So I was getting calls from members, like, and I wasn't answering my phone. And then John called, and I didn't answer my phone. Then during the week, John had called me, and I said, "Hey, I'm just going to take a little bit of a break." I said, "I'm just questioning some things. I'm going to take a couple of weeks." And he was like, "Oh, missionary, let me come to your house and talk to you." And I said, "Well, I'm not sure." I said, "Let me see, John." I said, "Give me a little bit of time." And then mother had called me like two times, and she was like, "I love you. I love you." They're lying about me because I had found out some things, and I had asked John. I text John about these things, and so then John comes over my house. I'll never forget it. My wife was in the she didn't want to come out. And she had liked John too. She loved John. I love John. John Lee and me were like that. He was my teacher from the beginning. I had a lot of respect for him. I loved him a lot, actually. And he came over and he said, "I'm going to explain it all." And mother said, "John, he's going to explain it. Come to, I'll explain everything." And I said, "Okay, mother." I actually cried on the phone. I was like, "I love you too, mother. I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on." So John comes over the house, and we're in the garage. My wife said she already told me, if he's coming over, I'm not going. I already know what I need to know. She went in the house. I'm sitting out in my garage because we didn't want him in the house. And he opens up his laptop and he says, "I need to explain." And me and him, okay, this is 2011. What is that? 12 years ago? 14 years ago?
Yeah.
So I was a man. I was 41 years old or so, grown man. So wasn't John. And me and him are in my garage watching a cartoon about how the false mother stole the thing. And I remember just watching this, and I'm inside, I'm going, "Oh my God, I'm watching a cartoon with missionary job, pastor, he might have been pastor then, about how this woman stole from God the truth." And he's looking at me, and John's very serious, and I'm looking at him, he's going, "You see now?" And I'm going, and I'm so uncomfortable. I'm like, "Do I see now?" "Yeah." "Get the hell out." "Get out of here. This is insane. This is getting
Oh man.
crazier and crazier." I'm a
Wow.
grown man watching a cartoon about how God's truth was stolen by the false mother, and they're going, "I think she took him. You better go get her now." It's like, I'm like, what is going on here?
Oh my god,
This
bro.
is getting crazy now.
Uh,
It was the funniest thing. I remember we laughed all night. Me and my wife laughed all night, and I'm going, "Oh my gosh!" It just solidified.
yeah.
He thought he was coming over to show me something that was gonna go, "Oh my God, thank God you came over, John. I was almost lost, but now I'm found again."
Yeah.
And instead, I was like, "What is this?"
That's
It's a
so crazy,
cartoon.
man.
So yeah, when the cartoon came out about me and Judas Iscariot, and they showed it in the church, I only heard about it. I don't even think I've ever seen it, but I heard about all of it, and it was laughable.
Yeah.
The only thing I can say, it was laughable because they had, and I already had, in hindsight, I already had that they had already used that with Joseph Kong. I mean, I was taken up in Korea. I was taken up to the upper rooms where, a general pastor came with some other senior pastors to tell me that Joseph Kong was no longer going to be at the church. My first pastor that I ever had, because he was a Judas Iscariot. That's what they said. And they said mother tried to tell him he was stealing money, and mother tried to tell him, give him many opportunities to repent, but he couldn't repent. So mother called him back to Korea, and then she let him come. Just the whole scenario was like, what is God doing all this for?
Yeah.
They're betraying God, but then God's letting them, and it's to show God's love, and it's
Yeah.
like none of it makes sense. But okay, it's to show God's love, but it's confusing the heck out of us. So
Yeah. So it's
what about
like,
us that's being
so
confused?
so you're so confused, and you leave the church, you're taking a break, and you're like, man, he hits you up, and it's like, man, he's gonna give me some guidance, and the best he has is this cartoon.
Cartoon. He
That's
came
wild,
over.
man. And then they do this cartoon about you, man. The only reason I bring it up is because, again, they do this honestly because if you say you didn't see it, but in the cartoon they have these characters portraying you and Stephen Hassan, and
Yeah.
like they make them look, you know what I mean, like poking fun at them, right? And it's like, this is the best you can do. That's all you have
I
is
think I
that.
did see that one actually. I think I did see
Yeah.
that one you're saying, because it was with me and Steve, and I think I do
Yeah.
remember that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, man, and it's just so wild to me. It's like they can't show you any factual evidence. They can't show you in the Bible. They can't justify it through truth. So what they have to do is they have to mock. They have to
Yeah.
bake it, basically minimize it. You know what I mean? And it's a tactic. You know what I mean? And it's just so crazy to me, man, that these people don't operate in good faith. And it
Well,
just
could you
shows.
imagine Apostle Paul or John or one of them making a cartoon video? Apostle Paul would have said, "Who is he? Let's go
Yeah,
talk to him right now. Let's head over that way,
yeah,
sir." Apostle Paul, that's like a 3 day journey. I know. Let's go. Let's head over there
yeah.
because he's got a problem and he's misunderstanding, and I'm going to teach him and explain it to him. And they come over with a cartoon. It's not
make
real.
make it make sense, man.
Make it
So
make sense. Yeah.
let me ask you this, Ron. How did you get in contact with Stephen Hassan?
So I had come, I think so. I had started looking up some stuff online, and I think I want to say Michelle. I reached out to Michelle. Um, she had told me she was already researching. Michelle was really the OG. She had been researching. I actually reached out to her, so she deserves all the credit. She put forth the work. That's a soldier right there. She's a soldier. You don't want to mess with Michelle
Yeah.
in any aspect. You don't want to mess with Michelle. She's proven herself to be a soldier. But I had reached out to her because I saw something online, and I reached out to her, and then I think she had pointed me to some things going on in Korea, and then I started researching it, and I ended up seeing the Church of God of the PCO. There was a bunch of other. I can't even remember right now. It's been such a long time since I researched it. But there was the Passover of Church of God. It was established by An Sung Hong. It was a little church. I remember talking to some people in Korea. I ended up finding out numbers and talking to some people. Um, and then I believe it was either Michelle had told me about Steve, and Steve had reached out to me. And at the time, he said, "Listen, I'm working with, trying to get some occult expert, Steve Hassan." He gave me he sent me some of his books. I read some of his books, and I was like, okay, guy knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's doing. And I ended up just linking up with him and going to do, he was actively trying to get somebody out. I think that's why he contacted me. Um, he was already in conversation with somebody's parents who was going to the church.
Okay.
And the way he designed his team was he wanted, ex-member, and then he had another guy who was big on scripture, biblical scriptures, and he would kind of design his team like that to help someone get out of the church. So I
Yeah.
was a part of that for a while.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
pretty fascinating to hear you say that, man. Because yeah, I didn't know the backstory to that, so
yeah,
it's pretty
yep,
cool. Pretty cool to hear that and see how Michelle was involved in that as well from the beginning.
yeah.
And what made you like want to tell your story at that time?
Well, I don't know if it was the circumstances of finding out everything. I hadn't moved yet. I was still in California, so it wasn't too far after. And I think the first time going on an interview with Steve Hassan, if you look at that interview, I wasn't quite as comfortable as I am right now.
Right.
If you look at that interview, in my mind, answering those questions, I was still, if you go back and watch that interview, I still had a lot of questions in my mind. I still felt like, man, if I'm doing this against God, I'm in
Yeah.
big, big trouble. I could be in really serious trouble. I didn't have the confidence I have now to be able to communicate it like I do now, but I had known what I known. I'd seen what I'd seen, and I knew that um, there was the false mother story. I had heard that and had evidence of that because I was a big time researcher then, so I was looking at all the stuff from Korea and getting all the translations and translating stuff at that time. So it was clear that there was a book about this false mother, and when I saw that, without if anyone's watching, if you hear that without ever being told that that should raise a red flag with you because that's a pretty big piece.
Yeah.
If you're talking about there's a mother God, and then there was so in other words, it's a big piece about being a false Christ. You see in the Bible they talk about a false Christ appeared and he said some things and it came to nothing, and that's how they knew he was a false Christ. So when it comes to a false Christ, there's a lot of attention to that given. It's not just somebody just ranting or raving saying they're a preacher of some sort. A false Christ gets a lot of attention. And I just could not wrap my head around why they didn't explain that. It
Yeah.
seems to be a big piece of the story. Like, hey, before we get to mother, we want to explain to you about mother, but you need to understand something. This is a big, big, important prophecy about understanding about mother. The prophecy in the Bible states that there's going to be a false one, and then the real one. You can incorporate that in.
Yeah.
You can incorporate that in that there's a false one and there's a real one. And to be quite honest, if you did it from the beginning, you might probably be people might have been brainwashed enough to go, "Oh, good to know."
Yeah.
Someone tried to take mother's attention. You could relate it and say, "Yeah, there's a false mother.
Yeah.
There's false Christ. There's a false Christ mother too." But the problem was how they revealed themselves was they didn't say that. Why?
Yeah.
So to me, it was like, why?
Yeah.
Why'd you leave that out? When someone leaves something out, there's a reason. You should try to figure out why somebody left something out of a major part of a story. So that's what made me have the confidence to say, yeah, all right, I'll do it. I'll
Yeah.
go on camera and say what I know, only what I know, and only how I feel. I didn't want to make up things. I didn't want to, like, they made a big deal over me talking about the African American thing, the black
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Man, that was real. I don't care. That was real. That was taught to me. I didn't know it. I never thought it before. I only thought it after I went to the Church of God because it was in a study and it wasn't just me that was taught that. It was many, not many. I won't say many because it was a smaller group that was taught that by Daniel Lee.
Yeah.
Um, but it was definitely taught to us. So,
Oh no, man, and I've talked to other former leaders who have reached out to me, and they also vouch for hearing those same prophecies.
oh
And
yeah,
the racism is still very much alive in the cult. As far as when I was in there, you would see that a lot during the during the feast pictures. After feast day, after the service, they would gather everybody in the sanctuary, and that's like they'd always make sure, like, put the white fruits up front. And if
yeah,
if you're got some melanin in you, go towards the back. They'll put in maybe one or two to not make it look so obvious, but they got to
yeah,
be the best dressed, and we're actually planning on doing, interviewing some, doing a whole episode dedicated on that, the favoritism, the racism, and racism wasn't just that; it was also showing how they felt they were superior to everyone else. The Korean race is is the heavenly race, is what they would say, right? And so Korean culture is heavenly culture, and so that's why they had people like, you know, me, or people who are not Korean in the least, trying to speak Korean with an accent. You know what I mean? I
Yep.
mean, we're
Yep.
looking like Boo Boo the Fool out there. You know what I mean? Like, I'm
Yep.
100% Mexican, and I'm over there trying to sound Korean, do a
Yep.
comb over like a Korean. You know what I mean? Like, oh man, it's just
And
wild, man.
you wonder why your family was like, "What is going on?"
Like, man, you ain't never wore a tie or a suit and
Yeah.
tie unless you went to court. What are you doing? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
No, they
crazy.
definitely believe. They definitely believe that the South Korea was Shem. They definitely
Yeah,
believe that.
yeah,
They believe Canaan was the African continent,
yeah,
Japheth was Europe, and Shem was the Asian continent. And Shem seems to Japheth will serve Shem, and Canaan is they ain't serving anybody. They're done, and that's what they believed.
yeah,
They You can bring them in the church, but God will weed them out in the long run because they don't have the blessing of God
yeah.
all the way back from the three sons of Noah.
And you know, again, that's not something that shocks me, because this is what this church does, and they're just like every other cult. Mormons use that same teaching, if I'm not
Yeah, that's
mistaken.
right.
There's other cults who use that same teaching, you know, and there's
Yep.
white supremacists who use that same teaching. And so you know, again, and it's just so funny to me because they claim to have the perfect truth, yet a lot of their doctrine is cherry picked from other cults, and they
Yeah.
basically built this Frankenstein monster, you know what I mean, and call it themselves, you know, they call it like it's unique to them, you know.
Yeah.
But man, Ron, let me just ask you this, I guess, you know, wrapping things up, man.
We can do a part two if you want later, but yeah, we got
Yeah, man. I just want to ask you, like, because they've obviously said so much about you, and and on my channel, man, I say names, I don't care, I air it all out. Missionary Michael, who you might know, he was, you know, from
I know
California.
Mike. Yeah,
he
I know
he
Mike.
he told us that, you know, you were this
Man.
biker guy who was all into the world and didn't want to fall in line, and he could tell from the very beginning you were worldly and you were no good and you didn't want to follow father and mother. And that is the picture that a lot of people paint of people like Michelle Cologne, people like you know, and now they're doing it about me and others. And so, you know, I just want, if you know, what do you have to say about all those accusations that people say? A lot of these people who you actually taught and were in charge of, right? So
Brought
what would you
in.
want to say? Yeah.
Mike is someone I kind of brought in. He was Miguel's fruit, Miguel and Stephanie's fruit. Mike and Eileen with the boys. They had two sons. Mike, yeah, I liked Mike a lot. Mike was a good guy. There was we have a lot of history together, me and Mike, because of um now if I ever talked to Mike, he'd know we found both of our wives going to the club and and left them at the same time to follow An Sung Hong and mother and all that. Mike would know, but Mike's been through a lot. Mike's a good dude, man, but the brainwashing's real. And Mike knows that none of that is true. He has to know that's not true. He knew me when I was there. Um, the only thing church members, let's say I was a biker and a drug addict and a drunk. I guarantee you, church members never knew that because I was at church preaching the gospel and always at church 24/7. They could call me. I would go out 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. I could be in my house and run out at 10 to do a Bible study. We preached from morning to night at colleges. So I don't know where I was a biker, a drunk, whatever. So he could say anything he wants. But the reality is that nobody was at church more than me because that's why I was sent to Korea.
Yeah.
You don't get sent to Korea to learn to preach, to lead Bible studies because you're not at church, because you're a biker and you're doing all kinds of other stuff. They never sent a biker to go learn for a month in the Elohim Academy before it was even open to be and to be a deacon and to be a missionary and to knock it off, guys. Um, to do all that if what Mike is saying is true, then how did I go up the ranks in the church? They don't do that at this cult. They don't take someone who is a bad character and promote them. Bad
Yeah.
characters get left behind.
Yeah.
It's the good characters they promote because they see some future in them.
Yeah.
So Mike knows that's not true, but I understand he has to. And I listen. I did it when I was there too. I can remember some people we had to get rid of out of church, throw out of the church that I might have been like, yeah, they didn't really do anything that bad, man. They were talking to a sister. They're brand new, they just got here. They don't know any better, but because they might have been lower class, poor or something, it was kind of said like we might want to make them leave the church.
Yeah.
So I understand what Mike's doing. He's got to be faithful to his cult and
Yeah.
what he is indoctrinated in right now. But I think that if Mike came out or Miguel came out or Stephanie came out or Will came out or um, uh, Sam, Frank, so many guys that I know, Mike Flanagan, Chris Hebert, it did come out. When they come out, their story is going to be the same. And you
Yeah.
might interview them and they'll go, I know, it's the
Yeah.
same story. There's nothing to be taken serious from cult members who degrade you or down you after you've reached the highest levels in a cult and you've only reached that because of what you've done for the cult.
Yeah.
So for them to say anything that you were doing while you were there, then why did I reach that level?
Exactly.
How did I get to that level going to Korea 3 times, being the only one by myself to go learn to preach the gospel when nobody else could preach it? No, there was no established schooling. There was only John broken English and Joseph Kong, and they took me to Korea so that I could be the face to go out and preach. I've been to Hawaii. I've been to Connecticut church, New York church, Boston church, sent all over to. And when I walked into those churches, it was like, oh, Missionary Ron. It was because I knew my stuff. I was a faithful follower. So anything Mike says, anything anyone says, it's not real.
Yeah.
It's a cult mindset, and that's fine. I don't blame them for it. I might have done the same, so I don't blame them for it at all.
Yeah.
But one day when they come out, I guarantee you they will not. It's not like when they come out, they're gonna go, "Oh no, Ron was." I know I'm out now, but one thing about Ron, I was right about him when I was saying those things. No, they're gonna go. I'm so hey, listen, I had to do what I had to do, and none of that was true. So it'll be revealed in the long run if this cycle continues and people start filtering out and the church goes down and people do come out and they talk to you or Jordan or other people who are still staying on this, then you'll get the story later on that it was all a lie that they were making up because they were trying to be good faithful followers, and that's fine. That's
So
fine.
so you're telling me you're not part of the Hells Angels?
Well, I mean, I wasn't a leader.
Oh no, man. Yeah, that's totally a
But
hundred
you know what's
percent.
funny? You know what's funny? You know what I learned about all lies? There's
Yeah.
always a piece of it because I did have a motorcycle at one point, but it was like a Honda Murata, and that was like early on, and I would ride it. I actually used to ride my motorcycle, but it wasn't a Harley; it was like a Murata. But I remember putting my Bible stuff in my saddlebags, and I would go do Bible studies, and I would take my motorcycle because it was cheap on gas,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't ride it to church. I would go do Bible studies. And I think I had that bike. Honestly, I think I had that bike for like 6 months. And I think it was right when I entered the church. I think I got rid of it like 6, 8 months when I was in. I got rid of the motorcycle, but I would ride it to go do Bible studies and stuff like that. But it wasn't like, but there's always, whenever
Yeah.
someone tells a lie, there's always something in there that is true.
Yeah.
It's just so spun so much.
And isn't it crazy that that's exactly what Satan did in the garden? He
Yeah,
took something that was said and he turned it into something, right? By adding
yeah,
his own words to it. We're not going to get too much into that because, like you said, these people are only doing what was done to them. And I get it. I
yeah,
also did the same thing. And you have to
yeah.
discredit these people because you don't want people leaving the cult. So I get it, man. And one
Yeah,
thing that I can say about you, Ron, is you're a stand-up dude, man. All the things they've said about you, all the things they've done, the silly cartoons they've made,
yeah,
all these years, and you still, man, the way you carry yourself with so much respect, man, I just applaud you, bro. And
Yeah.
thank you again for
Thanks, man.
doing
I
this interview,
appreciate
man.
that. I don't have it in me to not like somebody or to not like anyone. It's just not part of my character. Even when I was in, I couldn't get behind judging anybody. It wasn't my character. They knew I was a little bit different when it came to that. But I appreciate that, man. Yeah, because even with them, I mean, as much as I know they're a cult, I'm like, a lot of people in there don't know. I can't figure out who knows and who doesn't know. So it's hard to put a finger on someone and blame. But I do know mother that the mother and the heads, yeah, they know because they're making the stuff up. So
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, Ron, I'm gonna go ahead and let you cut out of here, man, because I know we've been going on for a while, but hopefully we can do a part two to this, man.
sure,
And for anyone that's watching this, I hope that you benefited from the content. And reach out, man. If anyone has any questions, if anybody has any thoughts, we're here for you. Like Ron said, we're more than we're more than open to have anybody come on here. Anybody
sure.
for whether it's Missionary Michael, whether it's Pastor Daniel Park, whether it's Daniel Lee, John Lee, Bruce Lee. I mean, we don't
Now's
care who it is. You know what I
now's the
mean?
time.
Yeah,
Edgar, it's time now to let God be revealed. Come and break us down,
yeah,
destroy us with the truth,
exactly.
crush us so that the world will see Mother is God. They can't.
Exactly. So that being said, again, if you found this conversation beneficial, please smash the subscribe button, share this content. It'll help it get out to more people that are in need of it. And until next time, thank you for watching another episode of Defusing the WMSCOG.
You're the man, Edgar.